The rest of them, their parents might spend a lot of money for them to go train with elite, to go train with the Flames, to go train over here, to go to this college, to go to that college. They might play at a higher level, but I guarantee you they're not getting their name called on draft day. That's just the reality of what's going on. And they might be able to get you some scholarship money. That's good at the end of the day, especially as parents. You want to save money, so you want them to be able to financially put themselves in a really good situation. How prevalent is that in the game of soccer? Is that something that's problematic, the fact that at such a young age, we are trying to develop these kids into something bigger when, again, there are so many teams, so many clubs, so many players that we've created this conversation around sports and developing that if you just spend enough money, if you just spend the right coach, all of a sudden your kid's going to be in a position to be great. I just think some kids just want to play sports and be around their friends and be healthy and learn things about working with a team and being a part of a community. That, in my mind, is the most important part about youth sports. But I feel like we've gotten wrapped up into this American culture of, well, we have to be the absolute best. Like, my kid has to be the absolute best. He's been in this sport for 3-4 years. He's grown a few inches. He's going to be the next Christian Pulisic. What is that conversation like in soccer? Is that pretty prevalent in the parents that are almost kind of trying to force success on their kids? Because I see that a lot in other sports.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there. I think the first one is I think the biggest issue in this country when it comes to soccer is the money conversation.
Yeah.
And as a parent, obviously, Nathan, you're not a parent, but as a parent, I can
Right.
tell you that there are certain things that are non-negotiable for me as a father and as a parent. And when it comes to my children, right, non-negotiables like their health, right, that's non-negotiable. We will throw whatever money is needed at their health, right? We want them to be healthy and happy in that regard. Like non-negotiable is making sure they have clothes. Now, it doesn't mean like my son is in this thing right now where everything has to be like name brand, right? Everything's got to be, essentials. And, it's like I can buy the same hoodie for $100 less. He's stuck on the name brands. And
Yeah, but it doesn't
obviously
have the tag on it.
I'm guilty of that too. My wife often goes, that you're the one responsible for that because I wear a lot of name brand stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
I kind of grew up in that way. I kind we always kind of had the name brand stuff, and so. But my job as a parent isn't to provide my son with the $140 hoodie and the $200 cologne. My job as a parent is provide them with clothes. So that it could be a
Right.
Walmart brand, it could be whatever. So there are negotiables in regards to that. But so I think that if we're talking specifically about sports, and let's just talk sports for a second, not necessarily soccer. Every sport is different. Every sport has its cost. It has its investment, right? Equipment, right? Hockey and lacrosse, I believe, are up there as I think, and even baseball, because you can buy $300 and $400 baseball bats. But I think if you're looking at it just from the standpoint of going even an entry level player coming in, I would imagine the hockey is way more costly. And lacrosse is way
Yes.
more costly than soccer because, again,
Yep.
you're buying shin guards and cleats. You can get away with that and buy some, whatever shorts. You can get away with buying something pretty inexpensive and not in a ton of investment. But you can't like skip a helmet. You can't skip the stick. The stick ultimately costs, costs some money. So I don't know if you lost your camera there, Nathan, or not, but camera just disappeared on me. But maybe we lost him. But anyways, the reality is that that there's a cost associated with playing the game of soccer. If you talk about your club fees, all right, club fees as a whole, that it can vary. But I would argue that it's probably on the low side, probably about $1,100 to $1,500 a year, just for your club fees. On the higher side, you're looking at more like 4,000 or 5,000. So that kind of gives you like the ceiling and the floor, so to speak. That doesn't include travel, right? So, and a lot of your lower level teams, Nathan, they're not going to pull, they're not going to like travel to Florida, right? There's just no tolerance for that. Now, me growing up, there was some tolerance for that. My parents wanted to go to Florida. So our team, if it was they all wanted to go on a vacation to Florida, and soccer was just a reason to kind of get us there. So I don't think there's a tolerance for that anymore with parents and with our society as a whole, where we're going to take our team that plays in the MSPSP green or whatever the number, whatever they call it now, the lowest level of Premier Soccer in Michigan, and we get clobbered every single game and go down to Florida, drive the 18 hours or fly the whatever and get our asses kicked and do it for the $3,000 it's going to cost. Like, that's not a thing. I don't think that's anymore. Like, you're going to travel to the Canton Cup, which is only a 40-minute drive. You're going to travel maybe up to Traverse City, Traverse City is tolerable because it's only a 3-hour, 4-hour drive, and it's Michigan still. So you get to get the benefits of both, but you're not going to travel to freaking California, and
Right.
go spend $7,000, right? That's
Right.
different. So like that kind of stuff is what I would say. But if we look at it from the standpoint of, because you mentioned from my coaching standpoint, there were things that I wanted to do as a coach with my players, and tournaments I want to put them in that would give them an opportunity to be challenged, right? My job as a coach is different than that of a player, right? My job and a parent, my job as a coach is to develop a team, and while you're developing the team, you're hopefully developing individuals, right? That's what your job as a coach is. It's development, but it's a collective development, right? And obviously during that process, you're developing individual components to a player, but it's in design to help the team,
Right.
right? And which is where the added value of personalized training has
Right.
tremendously had a tremendous uptick in the last 20 or 30 years, right?
Right.
And the reason that is because there's only so much that I can do with the 2 hours a week that I have with players. There's only so much that I can do. And that's where having a player, having a specialized coach will come in and give that player another 2 hours, but now it's personalized. Now it's individualized. It allows the player, the coach and the player to develop a plan that will help that player reach individual goals within the game of soccer. Right.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
but the one thing that I would say that has got to change at the youth level is specialized positioning under the age of 12. Right? The bet first things first. As you get to the collegiate level, you don't play the position that you've been training for your entire life. A perfect example is Zach Townsend, who played for Oak University. I believe he was a forward for his entire high school travel career. And when he got to Oakland, they're like, if you want to play, you're gonna play center back. So he had to convert
No.
his position, and there's no greater difference between a center back and a forward, right? There's
Mm.
some significant difference in how you learn that role and how you play and how it doesn't just translate. So Zach Townsend had to change his position, and I can guarantee you that for every player out there that's like, I'm a forward, there are 9 or 10 other players that are like, I'm not just a forward, but I'm also a defender. I'm also a midfielder, because
Yeah.
they've had to develop those skills, right? And if you can't develop those skills, you're not going to be a player that is going to fit into a Division 1 or Division 2 program, because this isn't always about talent. It's about fitting into a coach's or a program's ideals and their scheme and the way that they
Right.
play, their style of play. Western Michigan, for
Right.
example, here, which is on your side of the state, right, which is not too far from you, Kalamazoo, right? Um, Coach there has done an unbelievable job, of developing the style of play that works for Western Michigan, right? And so it's one of those things where if Chad Wiseman is looking for a certain type of player, you could be the best player on your team in your state, but you might not fit into Chad Wiseman's idea of the talent that he needs in his system. And so being a player that is able to change positions, being versatile, is going to make the biggest difference. So for me, at the younger ages, you cannot specialize your position until you're 12 or 13 years old, at which point you're like, I'm a midfielder, right? I'm a forward.
Yeah.
But you've gone through all the training as a defender, as a center back, as a goalkeeper. Why would you want to be a goalkeeper? Well, think about that for a
Why
second.
wouldn't you want to be?
How many teams out there, though, are like, man, we've got our goalkeeper, but they don't have a backup, especially at the youth level? How many of them don't have that? So you want to, get your player, get your son or daughter in goal, get them a couple hours of training with their team as a goalkeeper. First off,
Yeah.
it's tremendous benefit to the team. And when you go to that next club tryout and they're like, yeah, I play goalie. You've put yourself in a position where now the coach is going, oh, okay, well, we've got our main goalie. We've got our backup. We actually have a third player that can play goalie too. And if they're,
Right.
at least decent, that coach is now going, I'm not cutting that player
Right.
because they're versatile, because that player gives you the ability to do more. It's invaluable. You can't put a
Right.
value on that. So I'm hoping I answered your question, at least to some extent. But
Right.
again, if we talk about the club landscape in this country, there are 9,000 clubs in the United States. So about 180 clubs per state nationwide, give or take.
Yeah.
It's 4,186,000 and some change as far as the amount of players that play club soccer in this country. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of gives you a general idea of what what the club landscape looks like. We mentioned there's 240
I
or
mean,
so here in Michigan.
right. Without having to name names, though, and that's obviously that's something that we do all the time, but without having to name names or call anybody out or reference anybody specifically, my big question is, and you did answer it in parts of what I was asking. The biggest thing that I guess I just stay kind of caught up on a little bit is with all of these different clubs, and you were talking about the amount of money you have to spend. Now, I'm happy that there was a little bit of a mutiny with the parents in terms of being, traveling across the country and spending absorbent amounts of money just to go get beaten by X amount. And that still happens in different sports. And I actually there's a family at the West Michigan Whitecaps who their kids actually play travel soccer. They have two of them that both play travel soccer, and it's still the same situation. I mean, the amount they have to pay in fees, the amount they have to pay to go, even travel to somewhere as simple as South Bend, which, I mean, from here in Grand Rapids is only really not even a 2-hour drive, but that's still a lot of money. Hotels and this, that, and the other thing. To me, because you say that it's a little bit diluted sometimes at the youth level, which I would agree. If there's 8 million teams and 8 million different places, I realize you want these kids to play. Oftentimes, though, sometimes club sports can be separate to that of high school sports. So, automatically you're kind of taking away from school sports, which personally, and I know you've been a travel guy, you talked about how big of a thing that was for you, and you're still going to have a close relationship with your teammates, but I also find it a little problematic that we're taking away from high school sports, because I do think there is a great pleasure that comes with playing with the people that you grew up with.
And Nathan,
And so I think
a whole nother
right.
conversation, and I
But
don't disagree with you on that. So
yeah, so we can touch on that for sure. But my biggest thing is, what is the end goal with a lot of these parents? You've been a coach. You've had conversations, and I'm sure you've had disagreements with parents on playing time and where their kid is and this, that, and the other thing. But with so much money having to be spent to have your kids play at the club level and all of this other in terms of commitment, and not every single one of these 8 million kids are going to play at the next level and end up making money. Like if we're talking about ROI when it comes to youth sports, what is your return on investment for these parents? I mean, from your perspective, again, what is the end goal in spending all of this money and at such a young age putting them in these specialized clubs? Like somehow they have things figured out and they know exactly what they want to do. Because I just, my biggest issue here, JT, and it's something that really kind of transcends all sports, and that's wrapping your entire identity as a person up in the sport that you play. Like even me as a broadcaster, I've had to figure out how to separate who I am as an individual, on my deepest levels, who I am as a person, separate of what I am as a sports broadcaster, because those are two separate things. But at such a young age, kids don't know how to compartmentalize like that. So my question is, sometimes what is the end goal with these parents and spending all this money and putting these kids again in these specialized situations? What's the hope there? If you really can tell in even these coaches and these scouts and everything else, I feel like you can tell if this kid is not ultimately going to have the skills available to him to play at a high level or make some money doing this. I realize as a parent, you're not always looking for ROI. Like every dollar you spend on your kid, you're not like, oh, I hope I make some back. Like I get that. You're willing to make those sacrifices. But sometimes it just seems a little ridiculous with some places and some teams and some clubs and how much they spend. And I'm not going to say they lie to these parents and say that, oh, your kid's good enough to be with us and travel to all these places, but that doesn't mean they're not being disingenuous about it at the same exact time. I mean, it just seems to me, and maybe I'm alone on this, that the club culture in the United States is a little toxic. And sometimes it takes away from our true vision of who the best kids are in the best places, because we just have so many of them and they're all spending money on specialized training. This isn't, Brazil or Argentina where we're playing in backfields with dirt and no shoes on and, whatever pipes we could use to make a goal. Like, I mean, like that's where the true diamond in the roughs come from. But in the United States, we have this certain club culture. And again, it's not just soccer, it expands out to everything else because it's so diluted. I don't know. What's the end goal in your mind with some of this? Is it just a little bit too much at times?
Yeah, I mean the end goal. I would imagine. I can't speak to all the parents out there. It's this idea that their child's going to play at a collegiate level.
Right.
I mean, think about this, right? If you're a parent on a Saturday afternoon and you're watching Michigan versus Michigan State, you're watching the crowd and all of that. If you have a 10-year-old son who's playing football for the local Pee Wee, whatever, I'd imagine on some level as a parent, you're like, man, I'd be really cool to see my kid playing there. Right. I think that is probably a mindset. I think all parents always, I think, get in. I say all. I think most parents get their children into an event or an activity with good intention. Right? They're trying to
Right.
get their kid to be energetic and fun and find something that they want to love and they want to do, and they go out and do that. And then somewhere along the lines, it starts to grow in a different direction.
Right.
Our studios in Shelby Township are at Premier Sports Center, and obviously there's an indoor field. And I walk past these games, every Saturday and Sunday as we're in the studio, and I'm walking past, parents watching their 11-year-old playing the game, and cameras, and they're all screaming. A lot of them screaming very different levels of what they think they know.
Uh-huh.
So I think first and foremost, I think that there is an intention of an underlying, always positive and good intention of why their children are playing a sport.
Right.
The ultimate goal should be to develop your child into a responsible, accountable, and positive member of society. Like that. That should be
Yeah,
that
I
should be
agree.
the
Yes.
ultimate goal, right? My job wasn't,
Have you
my
seen the
young
other side of it though?
Oh my gosh, yes, of course I have. Oh, of
It
course.
just seems like that there in certain
Nathan,
situations, yeah.
it's the again, this is I said this all the time to my parents in our preseason meetings. I'd be like, "Here's what you want. I know what you want, mom and dad. You want the 10 best players and your son on the field every day there's a game. That's what you want."
Right.
Right? And you might have what you think is the other 10 that meet, but you want the 10 plus your child on the field for every game. And no one travels from work at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to go watch their son or daughter play at 5:30 or at 7, whatever time it was in high school, to watch them ride the pine. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Can you imagine like your mom and dad, like, I'm so excited to go watch my kid sit. Like, there's not a parent on earth that wants that. So
They would
as a
still show up
coach,
though.
no, but again, you're not going up to here's how does this work, right? As a parent, oh my God, my daughter, she won a medal in swimming. She won a medal in swimming. So what if, as a parent, I'm going to go out to tell the whole world, my daughter won a medal in swimming. She finished third place. She medaled at her swim event. My child made varsity. My child sits the bench on varsity. How many parents are going to go out there and tell the world that their child sits on varsity?
Not not
My
not
son's
not
starting
that
on
they
my I'm just saying in that way, right? So
yeah,
they're not gonna go do
right.
that. My child is
Yeah,
sitting down on their U13. They don't start in the
right.
U13 girls, whatever team they play on. I mean, no one's gonna go out and share that. Now they might share that in the inner circle, but they're not gonna go out on Facebook and share that. That to them, that's probably negative. To them, it's
Well,
negative.
and it to that degree, I mean, that's the whole thing though. Like the parents making it more about themselves than it is about the kids. Because this is the one thing that has always driven me nuts
Yeah,
about
but what
being a
kid is
ref,
gonna do
about being
but Nathan, what kid is gonna do that too? There's not a kid on earth that's gonna go, "My gosh," again, unless they're being sarcastic
well, I
about it.
get that.
They're
Yeah,
not gonna be like, "Oh my god,
I
I'm
get
a
that.
third stringer on the," I from someone that was a starter on every team I've ever been a part of. I was not a starter on my varsity team for 3
Right,
years. I had to
right,
sit the bench and earn my keep. But
right,
there's not a I learned so much from that though. What I
right.
learned from that is patience. If you are patient,
Yeah,
if you continue to put the work in, if you continue to stay focused on what the ultimate goal is, which is to be a starter my senior year, I just
mhm,
waited for my turn. No
mhm,
different than Jordan Love in Green Bay. No different than Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, right? Those are perfect. There's a reason why Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love are successful because they had a chance to sit behind veteran quarterbacks and learn before they got thrown into a situation where they were set up for failure. And
mhm,
if you look at that from that standpoint, those quarterbacks are much better for going through that than just plopping in and becoming a starter right off the bat.
yeah,
And it's an opportunity for that pressure. Sam Darnold this year for the Minnesota Vikings. I just said this to a friend of mine. I'm like, the reason why he was as successful this year as he had from previous years, there was no pressure. There's always pressure that you put on yourself, but ultimately, when you go into a job and you're the starter, and the whole world's talking about how bad you are,
right,
and now the next person can come in to take your role. There's no safety net. You're whatever.
right.
Sam Darnold, JJ McCarthy was supposed to be the starter this year. He got hurt. Sam Darnold comes in. He's the only guy. Now they had other people they brought in to kind of support him, but he was the only guy. So he's not worried about losing his job. He can go out there and just fling the football and be good. And so in regards to this specific question, is I would say it's every player, every family is going to have their own individual unique goal that fits them, right? And I'm not going to like put a blanket statement on what every parent is looking for, what they want, or what children want for their game of soccer or any sport for that matter. The ultimate goal is to use for sports is to learn the game and ultimately be able to, in a very positive way, grow into a much better individual in society that can work well with others. That's
Right.
really what sports is all about.
Yeah,
Um,
and I
if
agree
we
with
take
you.
if we take that goal away and say, what's the ultimate goal? It's to be challenged and then giving yourself an opportunity so that when an opportunity is presented, you are ready for that opportunity,
Right.
whatever the opportunity is.
Right.
Okay.
It's
Because
yeah.
and that's how I look at that. And that could be whatever. But now, does that mean the case? No, I can tell you right now that probably 30% of all parents taking their 10-year-old and going, I want my kid to go play college soccer. I mean, that's probably 30% of all parents. It's probably 30% of all parents going, my kid's never going to play soccer at a high level. I don't give a shit. Right. And then there's other
Yeah.
30% who are just kind of like, well, whatever. We'll just kind of ride what happens. That's how I put things.
Yeah.
And it's probably how it works.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with everything you're saying about the importance of building the characteristics and the personality traits and working on a team and everything else like that. And I get it. There's always going to be that demographic of parents that's a little bit over the top, that thinks that again, their kid's going to be the next Messi. Like I get that, but I always thought the important thing, at least in my mind, and I'm glad that you recognize that, was the fact that parents come into this thing understanding that the most important part of all of this is the brotherhood, is the memories, and it's the life lessons that you take away from this. Now, if you just so happen to be good enough to go on and play at a professional level, then yeah, that's good. Good for you. But we're going to be able to tell that pretty early on. But those are the important things. So again, my issue, since we wanted to talk about youth sports, is just the fact that there's just so much that sense of parents making it so much about them and living vicariously through their kids as opposed to what the kid is getting out of it. What I will say, and here's a one example that I know of in the sport of soccer that I think goes along with this lines pretty well. I was broadcasting, still am broadcasting for the school, but not as much men's soccer anymore. But I used to do men's soccer for Caledonia High School. And they had a kid who I think in back-to-back years led their team in scoring. He was the best offensive option on that team. He used to have whole cheering sections show up to just watch this kid. And I'm not going to name drop him, but he was really good. And there was no doubt in my mind or anybody else's mind he was good enough to go on to the next level to play college soccer. Now, whether that was around here at Grand Valley or Hope or Davenport or wherever else, he was good enough to do it. And all of a sudden, I'm going to this broadcasting conference this year with Caledonia High School, and I'm talking to one of the guys that's leading it, one of the chaperones. He's a teacher at the school. And I'm like, did Nate Moss end up going to college? Where is he playing at now? Just an assumption that he was there. I actually have two different examples. This is one. And he's like, no, he stopped playing. He quit. And he's just a college student now. He's going to,
So you weren't going to drop his name, but you did drop his name?
What's that?
You weren't going to drop
Did
his
I
name.
just drop his name?
You did.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Okay. Well, he would understand, I feel like, if I see that. But the conversation immediately, man, all right, I blew my cover.
Nick, right? His name is Nick?
Are spilled. But he's just going to college now. And he was talking about, the chaperone was talking about how he was just burnt out. He was just physically, mentally done. And this is an 18-year-old kid. And I saw the same thing with the kid that plays quarterback at that school. Again, his parents wanted to send him to IMG Academy. Do you know at IMG? That kids go to Bama, they go to Georgia, they go to Florida, they go to Michigan. Those are the best kids, high school football kids in the country. His parents wanted to send him to IMG Academy. And a year later, what does he say? I don't want to play football anymore. I just want to go to college. I want to be a normal kid. I'm sick of having this pressure on my shoulders. And I'm not going to assume everything, but I'm going to assume a lot of that came directly from his parents, who had these unrealistic expectations of where you should be versus where you are. And so I know we got to wrap up our conversation on you. I love this convo, by the way, because I talk about youth sports and parents in youth sports all the time. But those are just two examples of stuff that I've thought of that, again, I'm sure you've run into that before too. But it's just fascinating to me that someone at 18 years old can be burnt out in life. You know what I
Well,
mean? Like, I
I
feel a little
got
burnt out too, but I'm 28 years old. I'm a decade along. Like, that's a
well, I
little bit
got burned.
different.
I mean, I
So,
got burnt out when I was 18, and there were many
yeah.
reasons behind it. I mean, but again, there are I'm sure some very convoluted, minds out there that think a certain way about what their children or child is going to go do in their respective sport. I mean, but there to be something you said too. There's a lot of families out there where the mom and the dad played very high level collegiate athletics, and that kind of rides down the pipeline to their children. And,
Yeah.
and I can think of a number of
Expectation.
families that have children, that have gone on and had really good collegiate careers as well. Um, you know, uh, here's the thing. As we kind of start to step away. First off, IMG Academy costs about annually about $70,000 a year. By the way, so if we talk about what that looks like from a two, I mean I think that's up there with Harvard. But anyways,
It's up there.
uh, obviously, if we just talk about averages or generic athletes, um, most know by the time they're 12 or 13 what life might look like for them from a collegiate standpoint. Okay, and the reason why I say that is because at 12 or 13, as you start to get in towards the high school realm, if you are a good enough player, you have been recognized within your club or within a demographic of clubs in your area that are inviting you to come out and try out for their academy teams. They're trying to, coming out for a number of higher level team. If you are in that conversation and are trying out for those types of environments and have been offered those opportunities, then you are going to be in the conversation to be playing at a collegiate level, at least, kind of from like that 30,000 foot kind of like overview. Does it mean that you're going to go to college? No, but if you are being offered an MLS Next Academy, a position, if you're being offered an ECNL boys, a spot on the not RL but ECNL, there you have a very good chance of not you have a better chance than the next person. Okay, so I think that's important to acknowledge. All those opportunities start to happen from like 12, 13, 14 years old. Um, again, if not all players are going to go off and play from the ECNL level and go play college soccer, but at least it puts you into another space,
Right.
and you've increased your opportunity, and that's what I was talking about. All you're trying to do, if you're a parent, is saying, and again, this would be my instruction to my children, and what I would tell parents in my parent meetings is, you need to encourage your son or daughter to go out there and give everything they have. Give everything
Mm.
they have to it, right? So when they're
Mhm.
with us from 9 to 11 on a Saturday, they need to give it to us their 100%. That mind, body, spirit, all of it. It's got to be focused on what they're doing. If they do that, then the opportunities will be presented to them in many different ways. And when those opportunities come, you make a decision as a family, a decision as individuals that are best for you and your situation. And that's really what it comes down to. We had some comments on YouTube. Peter Mizuik, pay to play in America, but not in Europe. That is a huge difference. In Europe, you're not paying. And again, I don't know the full aspect of Europe and European, like the how everything works. I find it hard to believe there's not any pay. But pay to play in America is a big deal. That's why soccer is big business, right? Club soccer is huge. If you're talking about having 3,000 players playing for your program and 3,000 of them are paying $3,000, you do the math on that. That's a significant amount of money coming into your club. Not counting the coaches' fees. And you're muted, Nathan.
There
There
we
you go.
go.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say maybe some talent gets left on the chopping block simply because maybe mom and dad don't have the money to pay for them to play in the best clubs?
Um, Yes, but there's a lot of clubs. Here's the thing. This is my experience of being in Michigan only. I can't speak to other parts of the country. But if you have a player who you want on your club, you will make it work. You know what I mean? Now, I
Yeah.
think there's a disconnect between, and this is 100% the case. When someone says, "Well, how are we going to get to the World Cup?" Right now, there's a kid playing in Pontiac, Michigan, or San Diego, California, who is sitting there and they're kicking the ball in their backyard right now, or in the alley, or wherever they're located, in their apartment complex, and they don't have the means to get to a practice or get to a game. It is, as much it is a money thing, it is about the transport and things like that. I actually believe it's transportation more than it is money, because a lot of these clubs, they are going to make concessions. They're going to offer grants. They're going to offer, incentives to get you into their program, because most of these clubs, they want to have the next Christian Pulisic, right? But this kid is sitting there right now, and their parent is working 3 jobs. Their mom and dad don't have a car. They're riding the bus to work every day, taking 6 buses to 13 different stops to get to where they have to go. That is the problem. The money aspect of this, as much as it is, that is not the true underlying issue. It is a transportation to and from. That's it.
Right.
And there are these kids out there whose parents don't know. They don't have access to knowing all the information as it relates. They think that because they can't afford it, they're not even going to try. That is it. We have probably, I can probably guarantee you, we probably have thousands of players around this country who are phenomenal athletes, who are unbelievable, and they are not able to get to a soccer game or a soccer practice because they don't have the means to do that. Not the money, but the means to get to and from a training session. If you think about why football and basketball are the number one sports in this country, access to them is pretty easy. You live in your neighborhood. There's a park and rec team within your neighborhood. You can usually
Yeah.
walk there, hop on a bus. You're there pretty quickly. If you
Mhm.
wanna go play football for a high school, it's typically there, right? Middle school, high school, it's there. It's accessible. Your club team doesn't necessarily play at the high school. They play at a park 30 minutes from you.
Yeah.
So how are you going to take an Uber? It just can't be done. And a lot of these cases, you think about this, a majority of your kids, and they play, or kids, but a majority of these players, they play within their community, right? Or within an area of their community. So you've got 7 or 8 members of your team, and they're all within 10 minutes of where this club might be or where they might train. And the rest are coming in from out of the area because their parents are willing to drive them there, right? But how is that kid going to get carpooled in if they're not even in the same area, right? So how are you going to carpool that kid if they're 20 miles outside of your area? Someone's going to have to go out of their way to come get that child and back and forth. That's the problem. It's transportation. And that's what separates us, honestly, probably from winning a World Cup, is because those kids, if they got the specialized training with those teams and got the opportunity, they would make their way out of that environment and would be playing at a high level. And that's where our players are at. That is where our Christian Pulisic's times 10, they're located right
Right.
now. And they don't know it because no one's told them how good they are. But they are very good because they know how to, they train hard too. They probably train in their backyard. They're kicking the ball around, and they just don't have an
Right.
opportunity. They might play in their little rec leagues, little localized rec leagues, but they could be doing so much more if they just had the means and someone
Right.
could help them get from point A to point B, and really help them. That's the big difference maker right now in this country.
Almost makes me wonder if it would be worth looking at, in a way, kind of restructuring the way that we go about the whole process, though. Because they always talk about how, the definition of ignorance is, doing the same thing the same way over and over and over again and expecting a different result. And I don't know what you think about this, but maybe that's on our shoulders to start changing around a little bit of how that actually looks, to get more of those kids involved that, again, like you said, might not have the means to.
Yeah, I mean, first off, if we talk about politics, we don't talk about politics on this show, but if you talk about politics in sports, it's rampant, right? It's
Yeah.
not so much about what you know, it's who you know, and if you piss somebody off, good luck and Godspeed. You know what I mean? That is a huge problem in sport. And you're not going to see that kind of significant change that's going to change the overall landscape of how things are done in this country. It's just good luck and, like I said, Godspeed. It's not going to happen. Um, the reality is it's going to have to happen at a state, at a club level, right? Where your clubs are going to have to develop a transportation system that allows players who don't have the means to get to and from, carpooling, things like that. It's also about spreading the word that if you don't have the financial means or the way to get to someplace, don't let that be a hindrance, because if you are looking to play at the next level, we can help you. Because there's not a club, I'm telling you this right now, if there's not a club on earth that doesn't want to win. There's not a club on earth that doesn't want to say, oh my gosh, we had the Christian Pulisic of our generation on our team.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care how that
Right.
player got there.
Right.
And so there is an ego aspect to this. And
Right.
they just need to spread the word that there's options. There are options for players who are looking to get to the into their programs, that they can help them with those options. It's 9:56. We are about 4 minutes or so. This was another. I like this conversation, Nathan, because again, we talk about inside the game. This is exactly it. We're talking about really what's going on, the inner workings, and we'll continue to have conversations like this as we continue to move forward with the show. But I think it's great. I think the questions you asked were good too. I think if I were to just kind of sum this up for a second, ultimate goal. The ultimate goal should be to learn how to be competitive and be challenged, putting everything you have into something. And on the backside of that is, if you do all of those things, and you're patient and you have the right attitude, that what comes on the other side of the opportunity pipeline is what you want, right?
Uh,
With also understanding that no matter how hard you work or what you put into it, you might not get anything out of it.
mm-hmm.
That's ultimately it too, right? Is I can work my ass off of something and I still don't get what I want. That's the
Right.
world we live in. That's nothing new. And moms and dads, it's about supporting your child. It's about supporting them and putting them in a position where they can fail, but that failure can lead to success.
Fail forward.
I say
Yeah.
that all the time, failing forward. Failure can lead to success. Every day we fail, it's about picking ourselves back up again and
Right.
going at it again. So
Yeah.
that's what it's about. If it's not about that, then that because on the
Yeah.
sidelines you'll hear it. You'll hear it in our
Well,
games.
that's
You'll hear it. It's a
yeah.
shame, but that's how it works.
And that's the whole thing that I bring back to. And you had mentioned Aaron Rodgers a little bit earlier. I don't know if you've gotten the chance to actually watch that documentary out on him that's going around right now. It's
I have not.
really fascinating, and you don't you don't. I know we're Detroit guys, so we don't really care for him, but you don't have to go quite to that level. You don't have to be doing the holistic medicines and the healings and these exotic trips to the mountains of, Fiji or whatever. It's not like you have to do that in order to find yourself. But I do think it's fascinating that, even someone at that level, someone that's won a Super Bowl, someone that is probably a Hall of Famer in the future, can go through something like an identity crisis and not know who he is and kind of lose himself, get lost in the sauce, if you will. And I know we're not talking about those levels. A lot of what we do here is focused on youth and club and the lower professional levels in the United States. And I love the fact that we're doing this, but that would be my whole thing too. And again, I'm not a parent, but realizing, trying to teach these kids, like, your identity as a human being is separate from what you do in the game of soccer. Now, if you have the tools to be able to play at the next level, that's cool. We'll work on that. We'll do that. But the whole conversation about youth sports, and this is inside the game, and we're inside. We're getting into the nitty gritty here, but it's realizing, and I would say even as parents, like, don't don't live vicariously through your kid. You know what I mean? But try to support them and realize the bigger things, like you said, what's important to come out of it with it, which is the brotherhood, the memories, learning how to work on a team, but also just being comfortable being uncomfortable, because sports are going to put you in positions where you are uncomfortable a lot and you have someone yelling at you or down your back for whatever reason. So being able to persevere through all that. So that should be the focus. I just hope that, you're talking about the pay for play in America. I hope that we're able to figure out a way to continue to give kids that maybe don't have the means the opportunity to get to that next level, which I think there's more talent in the United States, especially when it comes to soccer. We have it. We just we got to figure it out.
No question. No question. That'll be a wrap here on episode number 3. We'll be back at this again tomorrow. The question mark for me, Nathan, is will I be in my car or not? We will know tomorrow. Because again, I'm traveling. I leave here tomorrow morning at 4 a.m. For Chicago for this United Soccer Coaches Convention. So I might just be on the phone. But either way, I'm excited about this continued our show here and continuing on. Again, you can watch this on YouTube as well as our Roku channel at National Soccer Network TV. You can also check it out on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. But for all of us here at the National Soccer Network, this was Inside the Game with Jonathan Turner and Nathan Wangler. Guys, have a great rest of your day.